Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz saxophonist, composer, and educator Dafnis Prieto. He has a new album, 2018's Back to the Sunset, and it's a great listen. He's originally from Cuba, where his revolutionary drumming techniques and compositions had a very powerful impact on the Latin and jazz music scene. He came to New York in 1999 and has played with the best since then, like Henry Threadgill, Steve Coleman, Eddie Palmieri, Chucho Valdez, Roy Hargrove, and even Andrew Hill. He is also the founder of the independent music company Dafnison Music. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Again, thank you for taking a minute out. I love the new album. I'm looking forward to kind of getting a good overview of your life and music. So thank you again.
Mm-hmm. Hey, my pleasure.
So let me go ahead and start off here. I mean, just from the word go, this album has such a nice, colorful, alluring album, pulls you in, and there's a great landscape of sound going on. Talk to me about the creative forces that went into your newest CD, Back to the Sunset.
This new CD, the undercurrent of this album, I focus on trying to pay tribute to a few musicians, artists that have influenced me and inspired me throughout my career. People that I've met when I was very young, or people that I've met just recently that I've worked with, and some people that I worked with, and some others that I didn't have the opportunity to work with, but still I received from them this big inspiration. That's the undercurrent of this album, kind of paying tribute to some of the musicians. And, I do it through my own eyes, through my own experience, and through my music. That's the way I do it. Instead of just, paying tribute to someone trying to simulate my music to theirs, I'm trying to pay tribute from my own point of view, from my own, experiences.
Speaking of experiences, you grew up in Cuba.
Yes.
So talk to me about your childhood and how you got so involved in music and more specifically jazz.
I started when I was a kid, around 5-6 years old. I was born and raised in a very musical neighborhood. No one, actually, members of my family are artists or musicians of any kind, but I was always surrounded by musicians in the neighborhood. And I started playing the guitar when I was about 7, and also I started playing the bongos at that time. Then 3 years later, as I continued my music studies, trying to learn here and there, I went to the conservatory, the music conservatory in Santa Clara, Cuba, where I am from. And then I did 4 years of classical training in that school of Santa Clara. And then I went to the National School of Music in Havana for another 4 years of training. Mostly the training that I received was classical. Just already inside of the school, I started, getting into jazz when I was I started listening to some of the jazz when I was about 10 or 11, where one episode was that I actually heard there was a really good big band in Santa Clara. They used to play jazz band charts, like some Minor Ferguson and some Herbie Hancock music and etc. That was my first experience with listening to jazz and listening to a big band specifically, which carry over all the way to now. This is one of the reasons why I did it now. It's just like it's a long run dream, almost 30 years of it. So anyway, I started getting into jazz, little by little later on. When I went to Havana, I kind of got a much wider influence of jazz, and I started listening to some of the greatest jazz musicians from the U.S. and also some other jazz musicians from elsewhere, like Brazil and Europe. And that's it. That was my beginning of my career. I am actually self-taught on drums. I did my my training based on classical training, and that was percussion, classical percussion, but also the tools of music itself, like harmony and counterpoint and things like that are part of the classical training as well.
Why did you pick the drums? You said you had some history with the guitar. Why was the drum set the place you wanted to be?
I don't know, it started driving me more for it. You know, when you're young, you kind of, you like a few things, and then you kind of start leaning towards more one thing or the other. I think at some point there was a really good drummer in Santa Clara. His name was Juan Carlos Rojas, and his nickname is actually El Peje. And I used to watch him a lot with that orchestra that I mentioned to you. It was called Orquesta de Música Moderna. And that orchestra really impacted me. It really influenced me a lot and gave me a lot of driving force in a way. And he was the drummer of it. I really love his playing. And I think I got excited with the whole idea of playing the drums. I mean, from that time, I kind of became kind of, just looking at drums and start dreaming with it. And, it just became my obsession in a way.
Nice. So did you always know that you were going to be a musician? Was that always your dream?
Well, yeah, it was always my dream. Sure. I mean, when we were kids, very little, you want to do many things. You want to be even a policeman or a firefighter or, just, a doctor or, many things. But musician, it was something that was always there, always, even when I didn't behave well at my house, they put me in a chair, and the only thing I asked for was, okay, you're going to put me in the chair because I didn't behave, but I need my guitar. So for me, music was always a path, a way out and a way in, emotionally and spiritually. And in a way, it was almost like a therapy, I would say, in that case.
Speaking of a way out and a way in, that's a perfect segue. You arrive in New York City in 1999. What was it like to finally get to this mecca of jazz and to be in a new country? What did that feel like for you?
Well, it was great. I was a little bit hesitant to actually come here because I actually came to New York before, and it was a little bit too much for me. It was I was very overwhelmed by the whole scene and the whole. At that time, at the end of the 90s, there were a lot of clubs going on and a lot of movements going on. I mean, that's from my own eyes and my own experience. Then when I made the decision to come, I still was a little bit frightening by the idea, but I thought that was the best move I would have done with my life, since most of the musicians that I liked, they lived here, and most so little by, I started getting into clubs and I started playing and going to a few jam sessions and meeting musicians. I already knew some of the musicians like Brian Lynch, a trumpet player who actually plays on the album. I also knew previously Steve Coleman, who also plays in the album, in the big band album, and I also knew Henry Threadgill, who also played the album before getting here. So when I got into New York, I called them up, and we met and we started actually doing things together since then, and then it just branched out to many other circumstances and projects that I started doing it at that time. But it was, I felt very welcoming. There were opportunities, and I felt those opportunities, and I used those opportunities at that time, and it was great. I met with great musicians and really, really good persons.
The one thing too, you as you mentioned, you played a lot of festivals and a lot of shows with a lot of people like Henry Threadgill and Roy Hargrove and Andrew Hill and a lot of these names. What have you learned from these legends? What have their years of experience, their clout, and their expertise given to you as a musician?
I think what I learned from them is that music is really also a matter of perception. Each of them has a very distinctive voice, a distinctive set of values and an approach to music. And that's what I liked about it. I liked about it that when I heard one of them, it didn't sound like the other one. Therefore, they were creating under their own personality and with their own values and principles. They were creating their own world of sound. And that's what I really liked about it. I really liked the idea that music is not just one only one big thing, but many separate individual worlds of humans behind it.
You know, the one thing about you, the other side of you, of being a performer, is that you're also a composer and you've composed music for dance, film, and chamber ensembles. How does that side of your life feed into you as an artistic creator?
Well, it's great. I think one influenced the other. I think I influenced myself by being a composer to being a drummer and vice versa. I love composition as much as I love playing, and I've dedicated time to compose music for different settings, and including this last album, the big band album, and it's almost like the other hand of the body. You have composition and then you have performance. That's what music comes about, composition and performance. And even in the improvisation realm of you're basically spontaneously composing. So there are different levels of composition in that way. But I will say that I'm really happy of that I actually took the course and start developing composition as well as drumming. I wanted to create my own water to swim. I felt, as I said previously, like all these musicians that I was working with, they had their own world. I wanted to create my own world of music to play on. Not only to be just a drummer playing around with different musicians, but I also wanted to create my own environment, musically speaking, so that I can play with, and it would be another way for me to represent myself and to put myself out there.
And another component of you is that you own a independent music company.
Yes.
As a musician, how satisfying is it also to kind of be in control of that kind of entity?
It is very satisfying. I think I found a great deal of information. I mean, I get to meet the music industry that way because I know the step-by-steps of how to make a record and what to do with it, et cetera, et cetera. The cost of it, the actual full control of the whole product. It is fulfilling for me, and it's enjoyable because I really like it. There are other musicians that they just don't like to do that, and they just find concentrate on something else. But in my case, I became about to do my own label, Dafnison Music, 10 years ago, just because it's a mix of a few things. I mean, I wanted to be in control of my music and the whole thing, but at the same time, I didn't have any labels interested in my music, so I created my own source, my own way of producing my music, and that was how it came about. There's also a lot of challenges. There is a big competition up there, and mostly, there are kind of little clans that happens between labels and distributors, and it's very hard for an independent label like mine to be distributed by big distributed companies because they're not interested on it's really becomes more political than musically. It has nothing to do with music. So it's very, very challenging on that term, on those terms. But I keep doing what I do because I like doing it, because I need to do it, and not because I'm not. I always going to expect challenges. That's part of being creative, because if you weren't challenges up there, then you most probably are doing the same thing that everyone else is doing.
Right on. The other component about you is that you're a teacher, classes, clinics, and workshops. What did you learn from all of the musicians, in particular the masters that I had mentioned and veterans of jazz? What did they give you that helped you be an effective teacher?
Not really in a teaching, in an educational way. I mean, one that I really have interchanged a lot of information in more educational, it has been with Steve Coleman. I used to play with him a lot. I used to tour with him a lot, and we used to do a lot of clinics and master classes and workshops. there, when, by him doing it and I being part of the band and being there, I learn a lot by listening and experiencing and how to teach certain things. And that really helped me a lot. Most of the other musicians, I mostly, playing on stage and do rehearsals and stuff like that, but they weren't really showing me anything that in a way could be translated, in a educational, environment or setup. As I say, since I'm classically trained and I'm self-taught on drums, I published a book 2 years ago that is called A World of Rhythmic Possibility, and this is a book that, it just talks about my experiences on how I get to certain conclusions and certain strategies in order to play certain things. Anyway, it's hard to mention like that because it was the way I learned with these musicians. It wasn't necessarily in academic settings. It was much more in a more creative way, which is transcribed and it translates into my performance, and it translates in the way and the vision that I have as a musician, as an artist. And obviously it does translate when I'm teaching students, because my advices to them are going to be related to those influences as well. But it's very hard for me to have that, to translate that specifically from one part to the other.
You have gotten a number of awards in your life, the MacArthur Fellowship, you got a Latin Grammy. So my question is this: I don't want to know the favorite award that you got. That's not fair. But what I want to know is, what award have you received that surprised you the most? You just didn't expect it. When you got it, you thought, wow.
The MacArthur. I think the MacArthur is the biggest, the most surprising award. And the reason is because I didn't apply for it. And the reason is because it is actually, it's not a musical award either. So to me, I was very, honestly, I was very surprised and also very happy. Also, it meant a lot to me, just because the efforts were already, my efforts weren't about making an application. My efforts were done before by being part of a creative, scene and sharing my talents with that scene and being there and working hard in order to develop music and to put myself out there and to play music around with the guys that I like. So that was the effort. And that's what I really like, in a way, that the MacArthur as the best of all, because they, you didn't have to. I still don't understand why you have to make an application to gain an award, because then everyone would like to do that. I think awards are something that you deserve, or something that you don't apply for it. There is a misleading on a lot of things that, for me, they should be called just competition, because that's what it really is. You won a competition. You didn't won an award. Awards are something that are given. You don't apply for awards. But anyway, That's my way of looking at it. But anyway, going back to my experience, the MacArthur, for the many reasons that it means, it's an award on creativity. It's an award on very particular aspect of being creative and being, somehow a sense of uniqueness that it really just resonates with the way I think and feel about many things.
Let me ask you this. How do you feel about your career so far? Are you happy with how everything's turned out?
I feel happy with what I've done. I think if somehow I would have a maybe better how can I say this? I'm happy with what I've given, with the work that I've done as a composer and as a drummer. But I feel there is a lot of unnecessary walls in the music industry that you keep just knocking at those walls and those doors, and they just don't open. And there is a lot of distortion and confusion out there of what is good and what is not in terms of quality of music. And nowadays there is a lot of information out there, and I think the part that I'm not happy about is that I would love to be doing much more meaning on performance and also on the of just exposing myself. I think everything that I is because I have done it. It's not because someone else has been interested on it. And many times, now I got the opportunity to produce this latest album, the big band. I had the opportunity to co-producing this with Eric Oberstein, someone that just appeared out of the blue for me a year ago, and we initiate this project of the big band. But before that, I've been 10 years putting out my records from my own pocket and without knowing what is going to happen. And sometimes some stuff happens, and sometimes nothing happens. I think I would have liked to be doing better in terms of presenting my music around. But I completely understand there is a system out there, kind of designed for certain structures and for people that are part of the labels and people that are that have much more better contacts in the music industry than I do.
So let me ask you a general question. Why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because I think that it resonates with the way I like to express myself. I mean, it uses the improvisation, but the improvisation is just, it's just a part of it, because in a way, jazz was not the genre that created improvisation. I mean, we've seen improvisation for thousands of years. I just think that, I like the sound of the drums. I like music. I like the whole also the amount of differences and within the genre itself. I just felt that it was a template in a way that I could find myself in it, and that I like very much. When you resonate with something, you feel that empathy and just this kind of connection with the genre. But I love all the genres too. I love classical music. I was trained in classical. So, and I love other kind of music too. I like music from India, and music from Africa, and music from Latin America. I mean, I also feel admire and got really inspired by the people that have really sustained the genre since the beginning, since the beginning of the swing era and to now, and all its different branches and personalities that have been able to personalize the music. Also, I have the tendency to not see music as not as a generic thing. I think music is created by individuals, and those individuals are the ones that I'm talking about.
So let me ask you this. This is my final question to kind of get to the essence of you. Everyone has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, your fans. But when you face the world, who do you think you are?
Well, I always perceive it as an open source for me to look at possibilities to enhance myself as a person, spiritually, and make myself a better person. And also, I try to get from it as much sources as for me as to inspire myself and a source of inspiration. I don't agree with many things that are happening in the world, in many different branches, including politics, including social activities, including the music. That's just my opinion. And what I would love to see in the world is that people get more culture and get more culturalized, so that we as a musician feel more receptive and understanding of people, and not to only treat music as an entertainment, but give the right values to music and to art, which is all these other values that makes you a better human being and someone with a certain sensitivity, and with one another, and create different, just a more friendly environment through culture, more than in any other field.
Beautiful. That's a great answer. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking some time out for me today to talk about your album and your life in music. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope you guys enjoy the album. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Cuba, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dafnis for his time, his honesty, and his story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.